You're trash, no one loves you, and you should just do everyone a favor and disappear. That wasn't a comment from an internet troll. That was a DM from my sister while my mom stood behind her, cheering her on. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted me dead. And when I finally tried to run, my mother proved it by trying to make sure I never made it to the gate. I stared at my phone screen until my eyes burned. My sister Sarah was sitting right across from me on the couch. She didn't even look up. He just kept typing. My mom was leaning over her shoulder, pointing at the screen and giggling like they were watching a funny cat video. But they weren't. They were telling me to end my life. Did you get it? Sarah asked. She looked at me with a mean smile. I hope you read it twice so it really sinks in. I felt a cold shiver go down my back. This was my family. These were the people who were supposed to love me. I looked at my mom hoping to see some kind of pity in her eyes, but there was nothing. Mom, did you see what she sent me? I asked. My voice was shaking. Mom just laughed. Oh, don't be such a baby. Sarah's just telling the truth. You're a dark cloud in this house. You make us all miserable just by breathing. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to college. I'm moving out next month. I already got my papers. The room went dead quiet. My mom's face changed in a second. The fake smile was gone. Her eyes got wide and red. She didn't look like my mom anymore. She looked like a monster. You're doing what? She whispered. It was a scary kind of quiet. I'm leaving, I said, trying to sound brave. I want to have a life. I want to be happy. Mom started to scream. It was a loud, high sound that made my ears hurt. She grabbed a glass from the table and threw it at the wall near my head. It shattered into a million tiny pieces. You selfish girl, she yelled. You don't love me. After everything I did for you, you want to leave me all alone. You're not alone, Mom, I cried. You have Sarah. Sarah is the only one who cares about me. Mom shouted. She was huffing and puffing. You're a traitor. You think you're better than us? You think you can just walk away? Sarah stood up then. She walked over to me and poked her finger hard into my chest. You aren't going anywhere. You're too stupid to live on your own. You'd starve in a week. You're stuck here with us forever. Mom started to mock me then. She made a sad face and used a high, squeaky voice. Oh, look at me, I'm going to college. I'm so smart. Then her voice went flat and mean. You aren't going. I'll burn your papers. I'll lock the doors. You belong to me. I ran to my room and locked the door. My heart was beating so fast it felt like a drum in my chest. I sat on the floor and cried, but I made sure to stay very quiet. If they heard me crying, they would just come to the door and laugh at me more. I looked around my room. It didn't feel like a safe place. It felt like a cage. For years, I thought this was normal. I thought all moms yelled this much. I thought all sisters were this mean. But seeing that message on my phone changed something inside me. They didn't just dislike me. They hated me. I realized then that if I stayed in this house, I was going to die. Maybe not because they killed me, but because they would break my spirit until there was nothing left. I was living in a nightmare and I had to wake up. I pulled a small backpack from under my bed. I had to be very, very careful. If they saw me packing, I didn't know what they would do. I started to grab the things I really needed. My ID, my birth certificate, and the little bit of money I had saved from cleaning houses for the neighbors. Every time I heard a footstep in the hallway, I jumped. I hid the bag under a pile of dirty clothes. I had to act like everything was normal. I had to pretend I was staying. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door. It wasn't a nice knock. It was a loud bang. Open up, my mom yelled. I wiped my eyes and opened the door a tiny bit. Mom was standing there with her arms crossed. She looked me up and down. What are you doing in here? She asked. Her eyes were searching the room. Nothing, I said. I'm sorry, Mom. I was just upset. She narrowed her eyes. You better be sorry. You're staying right here where you belong. You aren't going to college. You're going to stay here and help me around the house. Do you understand? I nodded quickly. His mom. I understand. Good, she said. She reached out and pinched my arm really hard. Don't you ever try to scare me like that again. I'm the mother. I make the rules. She walked away and I closed the door. My arm hurt where she pinched me, but I didn't care about the pain. All I could think about was the bag under my bed. I waited until it was late at night. I could hear Sarah laughing at a show in the other room. I could hear Mom snoring. This was my chance. I grabbed my bag and put on my shoes. I didn't take much, just enough to get by. I opened my window. It was a long drop, but I didn't want to use the front door. The front door creaked and Mom slept like a dog. She heard everything. I climbed out onto the ledge. My hands were shaking so much I almost slipped. I dropped to the grass and stayed still for a second. The air felt cold and fresh. I looked back at the house. It looked dark and scary, like a big mouth waiting to swallow me up. I started to walk toward the gate at the end of the driveway. I tried to stay in the shadows. I was almost there. I could see the street lights. I could see freedom. Suddenly, the porch light clicked on. Where do you think you're going? It was Mom. She was standing on the porch, holding a heavy glass vase. Her hair was messy and she looked wild. She didn't wait for an answer. answer. She ran down the steps faster than I had ever seen her move. I started to run, but I was clumsy with my bag. I heard a loud crash right behind my heels. She had thrown the vase at me. It missed my head by only an inch. "I'll kill you before I let you leave me," she screamed into the night. I didn't look back. I just ran. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, not daring to look back. My mom's angry shouts faded behind me, swallowed by the night. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go back to that house. It wasn't a home. It was a prison. I reached the main road, my chest heaving. My heart was still pounding like a drum. I saw a gas station in the distance, a small island of light in the darkness. I pulled out my phone. It was almost dead. I had to call someone, but who? I scrolled through my contacts. Most of them were school friends who wouldn't understand. Then I saw a name, Maria. She was an older girl from my school, a few years ahead of me. I had helped her with some homework once, and she was always nice to me. Maybe she could help. I called her, my fingers shaking. She picked up on the second ring. "Hello," she sounded sleepy. "Maria, it's me." Narrator's name, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need help." I ran away. There was a pause. Ran away? From where? What happened? I quickly told her everything about the texts, about my mom throwing the vase. I tried to keep it short, but the words tumbled out of me. "Oh my God," she said, her voice full of shock. "Are you safe right now? Where are you?" I told her I was at the gas station. She told me to stay there and that she would be there in 15 minutes. She hung up. I sat on a bench outside the gas station trying to calm down. Every car that drove by made me jump. I kept looking over my shoulder, scared my mom would find me. Exactly 15 minutes later, Maria's small old car pulled up. I ran to it and jumped in. She looked at me, her face sad. "You look awful," she said gently. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said, "just scared." She drove us to her house. It was small and cozy. When we walked in, her mom and dad were sitting in the living room. They looked surprised to see me. Maria quickly explained everything, and her parents' faces changed from surprise to concern. Maria's mom, Mrs. Rodriguez, gave me a hug. It was the first real hug I had gotten in years. I almost cried. "Oh, honey," she said, "you can stay here for tonight. We'll figure something out in the morning." I felt a little bit of hope. Maybe everything would be okay. I was so tired. I just wanted to sleep. Maria showed me to a small guest room. I closed the door and fell onto the bed, completely exhausted. The next morning, I woke up feeling a tiny bit better. I went to the kitchen where Mrs. Rodriguez was making breakfast. It smelled amazing. "Good morning, dear," she said with a warm smile. "Eat up. You must be hungry." I ate the food, which tasted like heaven. Then Maria and her parents sat down with me. "We talked last night," Mr. Rodriguez said. He looked kind but also a bit worried. "Your mother, she's a very difficult woman. We've heard things." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" "She has a reputation in town," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly. "She's known for being very possessive and aggressive. We're worried that if you stay here, she might come looking for you. And if she does, it could be dangerous for all of us." I looked down at my hands. I understood. They were scared. My mom was scary. I couldn't blame them. But where would I go now? "We called a number for you," Maria said. She held out a piece of paper. "It's a shelter for women and girls who are going through things like this. They can keep you safe." A shelter. I had never thought of that. It sounded lonely, but also safe. "It's called the Haven House," Mrs. Rodriguez explained. "It's a good place. They will help you." I thanked them for everything. I knew they were doing what they thought was best. Maria drove me to the address. It was a big, plain building, but it had a high fence and strong doors. It didn't look like a home, but it looked secure. When I walked inside, a kind woman with soft eyes greeted me. Her name was Brenda. She had a calm voice that made me feel a little less scared. She listened to my story without judging me. She just nodded and said, "We'll help you here. You're safe now." She showed me to a room with a small bed, a desk, and a window that looked out onto a quiet garden. It was simple, but it was mine. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't just safe. I was away from the constant fear, away from the screaming and the hateful words. I was finally free, but I knew this was just the first step. I had a lot to figure out. I had to heal. I looked at the garden outside my window. There were some pretty flowers growing there. They looked strong even though it was almost winter. I hoped I could be strong too. The first few days at the shelter were very quiet. I spent a lot of time just sitting on my bed, staring at the wall. My body felt heavy, like I was made of lead. A doctor came to see me because I had bruises on my arms from where my mom had grabbed me. He was very nice. She touched my arm softly and told me it wasn't my fault. I started to cry. I didn't mean to, but once I started, I couldn't stop. stop. It felt like all the sadness of the last 10 years was finally coming out. Brenda, the lady who ran the house, sat with me. She didn't tell me to stop crying. She just gave me a box of tissues and sat there. "You've been through a lot," she said. "Your brain and your heart need to rest." He was right. I was so tired. In that house, I always had to be ready to run or hide. I always had to check my phone to see what mean things Sarah was saying. Here, nobody was screaming. Nobody was throwing things. It was so quiet it almost felt strange. After a week, I started going to therapy. I met with a lady named Karen. At first, I didn't want to talk. I thought she would think I was bad or that I deserved what happened. But Karen told me something I will never forget. She said, "Family is supposed to be a safe place. When they hurt you, that is called domestic violence. It doesn't matter if it's a husband or a mother. Abuse is abuse." Hearing that word, abuse, made it real. I wasn't just a bad daughter. I was a person who had been hurt by people who were supposed to protect me. I also started meeting the other women in the shelter. There was a woman named Maya who had 3 little kids. She had left her husband in the middle of the night just like I left my mom. We sat in the kitchen and talked while her kids played. "What are you going to do next?" Maya asked me one morning. "I want to go to college," I said, "but I don't have a job. I don't have any money. I don't even have a real suit for an interview." Maya smiled at me. "Don't worry about that. Look around. We all help each other here." The next day, Maya and 2 other women took me to a big closet in the back of the building. It was full of donated clothes. They helped me pick out a nice blue shirt and black pants. They even showed me how to do my hair so I looked professional. They cheered for me like they were my real sisters. Felt so good to have people on my side. I spent hours at the library nearby. I worked on my college applications and looked for jobs. I wrote a new essay for school. I told them my whole story. I told them how I escaped and how I wanted to help other people one day. I felt proud of what I wrote. It was the truth. One afternoon I got a call. It was a small office in town. They wanted me to come in for an interview to be a helper at the front desk. I was so nervous. My hands were shaking as I put on the blue shirt. I kept thinking, what if I mess up? What if they see I'm just a girl from a bad home? But when I walked in, I remembered what the women at the shelter told me. I was strong. I had survived a monster. I could handle a job interview. I got the job. I walked back to the shelter with a huge smile on my face. When I told Brenda and Maya, they hugged me and we had a little party with juice and cookies. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was winning. By the end of my 30 days at the shelter, I had saved up enough money for a tiny room in a shared house. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I had a key, I had a bed, and most importantly, nobody else had a key. On my last night at the shelter, I sat in the garden. I looked at the flowers again. They were still there, standing tall. I realized that I wasn't trash. I wasn't someone who should disappear. I was someone who was just starting to live. I moved into my little room the next day. Felt big and empty, but it felt peaceful. I blocked my mom and Sarah on everything. I didn't want to see their names ever again. I wanted a clean slate, but as I sat on my new bed, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't know. My heart froze. Was it them? Had they found me already? I stared at the unknown number on my phone screen. My heart was in my throat. I was so scared it was my mother or Sarah calling from a new phone to scream at me again. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello," I whispered. "Hi, is this the student who wrote the essay about the gate?" A kind voice asked. It wasn't them. It was the admissions office from the new university. I had used my story, the real, painful truth about the night I ran, in my application. "Yes," I said, my voice getting stronger. "That's me. I'm calling to tell you that you've been accepted with a full scholarship," the man said. "Your essay moved everyone here. We want you at our school." I sat down on the floor of my tiny new room and cried. But these were happy tears. The story that my family used to make me feel like trash was the very thing that was going to give me a future. They wanted me to disappear, but instead I was finally being seen. 3 years later, I stood in my bedroom and looked at the mirror. I was wearing a black gown and a cap with a tassel. It was my graduation day. I looked at the girl in the mirror and smiled. She didn't look scared anymore. She didn't look like a girl who had to hide in the shadows. She looked like a woman who knew her worth. My life is so different now. I finished school at the top of my class. I didn't just get a degree, I found myself. But the biggest change isn't my job or my school. It's the people around me. I am engaged to a man named David. He is the kindest person I have ever met. When I first told him about my past, I was so afraid he would think I was broken. Instead, he held my hand and said, "You are the strongest person I know." David's family is wonderful. For the first time, I know what a real family feels like. We go over for Sunday dinner, and his mom hugs me just because she's happy to see me. There is no screaming. There are no mean texts. There is only love and laughter. I've also learned how to take care of myself. Every Monday, I go to the market and buy myself a big bunch of bright flowers. I put them in a vase. a beautiful one that I chose myself. I'm not afraid of vases anymore. I make sure I get enough sleep. I eat good food. I listen to music that makes me happy. I realized that my mom and sister tried to take my life away, so now I celebrate every single day that I am alive. I am healthy, I am safe, and I am loved. Sometimes I still have bad dreams. Sometimes I hear my sister's voice in my head telling me I'm nothing. But then I look at my graduation photo or I look at David and I remember the truth. I wasn't the problem. The way they treated me was the problem. To anyone out there who is living in a house full of fear, please listen to me. Family abuse is domestic violence. Just because they share your blood doesn't mean they have the right to hurt you. You are not trash. You are not a burden. You deserve to be happy and safe. Don't be afraid to run. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There is a whole world out here waiting to love you. I made it to the gate and I kept going. You can too. I walked out of my room and headed toward the graduation ceremony. As I felt the sun on my face, I realized that for the first time I felt free, not from them but from my old self. I am finally the person I was always meant to be.